Thank you for joining us today for another exclusive interview sponsored by Immuvet. Help your horses reach their maximum potential with Immuvet's line of natural homeopathic products. I'm your host today, Aurelian Drumian. Today we're joined by Dan Blaker, a British-born trainer making waves in the US racing scene. From humble beginnings at Hollywood Park to Breeders' Cup glory with a remarkable straight-no chaser, Dan has become a leading name in American sprinting. With aspirations for the Riyadh Dirt Sprint and Golden Shaheen, we'll dive into his journey, his unique training philosophy, and his plan for international racing dominance. Stay tuned for an inspiring conversation with a true global talent in thoroughbred racing. Excellent to have you here, Dan.
Thanks for having me on. Pleasure to be here.
So, coming off an emotional Breeders' Cup Sprint victory, how has Straight No Chaser progressed in training during the California wildfire disruption? And how are you adapting, his preparation schedule for Saudi?
You know what? He came out of the Breeders' Cup really well. We just freshened him up a little bit after that race. Didn't work him for about 6 weeks, and gave him some time and brought him back. He really responded well. He freshened up, and he's always kind of a high energy horse, but he's done excellent since the Breeders' Cup. Hasn't missed a day, and really just done everything very, very strong and very well leading up to the race and the next race in the Middle East. And with regards to the wildfires, obviously that was it was a really it was a terrible time for Los Angeles. But my family were really fortunate that we had to evacuate, but our house was okay. And sadly, other people in our community were not so lucky, but we were really lucky and very fortunate. With regards to the horses, Sandra Nita, it was geographically close to the fires, but not. We're never at a point of concern. Santa Anita has a fire marshal that works on the track, and he kept everyone up to date with the updates. And uh, the fires never really got into to proximity with Santa Anita of concern. And it was smoky for a few days after the fires, and where we couldn't do any training until the air quality improved. So he missed a couple days there, but really it was only a few days. And once we got him back, can training, everything got back on track, and he got back working about a week later. So he really hasn't missed
Oh,
any training really at all.
that's great. That's really good.
Yeah.
And what influenced your decision to go straight to the Riyadh Dirt Sprint without really a prep race?
I think the three most prestigious dirt sprints in the world are Breeders' Cup Sprint, the
Mhm.
Riyadh Sprint, and the Golden Shaheen. So really these two races in the Middle East are the next goals for him. And it's a combination of factors. I mean, those are the big goals for him. There wasn't a real obvious race at home that made a lot of sense to point for in between. And he's the horse that runs really well fresh. He doesn't need a prep race, and arguably he runs even bigger when he's coming off of freshening. So it was a pretty straightforward decision, with all those things considered.
Fair enough. Excellent. The timing between the Riyadh Sprint in Saudi and the Golden Shaheen in Dubai is about 6 weeks this year. How does this expanded window influence, your planning? And what makes you confident Straight No Chaser could handle both races?
Well, I think we just take each race uh, as it comes. Right now, we're pointing for the Riyadh Sprint. That's our next goal.
Mhm.
We'll see how he runs there, and hopefully everything goes smoothly and he runs well, and we can get ambitious and point towards the Golden Shaheen. But right now, the goal is that's what we're pointing for right now. Look, if everything goes in a perfect dream world, if everything goes well and he runs well in Saudi, then I think certainly the Golden Shaheen is our next goal, and the 6 weeks between races certainly will work in our favor. And it certainly will improve our chances of running a better race in Dubai. He's kind of horse that, as I said, he runs really well fresh, and a little bit more time between races especially when you're traveling all around the world, is only going to work in our favor. And I think the calendar, the way it worked this year, when I realized it was 6 weeks, I certainly thought that there was a good chance that it could mean we could do both. But it depends on the horse. It depends how he runs in Saudi. It depends how he comes out the race. It depends how he ships to Dubai, how he's training in Dubai, and it's up to him. And that's kind of the way. That's always been my MO. How I prepare these horses for the races.
Excellent. And looking beyond the Middle East races, you've mentioned targeting, another Breeders' Cup Sprint defense. How do these international races fit into your long-term vision for the horse's 2025 campaign?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, we just take each race as they come. In a perfect world, yeah, we can be dreaming. It's a long way from now, November 2025, and right now our main goals are these races in the Middle East. These are his main part of his 2025 campaign. They're not prep races for Breeders' Cup. This is what we're pointing for. And that's what I'm excited about for him. He's proved himself as the best dirt sprinter in America, and I want him to do it on the world stage as well. So he's a super talented horse, obviously the most talented I've ever had. And I just hope that he can do it on the world stage. And if he does that, yeah, later in the year we can, if he's still doing good and doing great, we can dream about coming back here, coming back to Del Mar and on our home turf again. But right now, Middle East is the goal. That's what I'm focusing on.
Excellent. I'd like to talk a bit more about your move to the US. So,
Hmm.
your path from show jumping in England to becoming, a Breeders' Cup winning trainer in California is quite incredible. How did you experience with the Darley Flying Start program, especially that Kentucky Derby day at Churchill Downs in 2006, shape your decision to train in America?
Yeah, it's crazy just to think back on how my path has taken me to this point. It all just starts with I think with the love of the horse. Like I grew up around horses. My father was a steeplechase jockey, and we always had horses. I learned to ride at an early age. It's always been a big part of my life, and I always kind of had a feeling that they were going to be a career path for me down the line. But it wasn't until the Flying Start, the Darley Flying Start program, that I really fell in love with training in America, especially. And so I really owe, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the Flying Start program and for Sheikh Mohammed, that his vision to start that program. And I feel very fortunate to be a part of it and to be here. With a Breeders' Cup win under my belt is a dream come true, and I'm really thankful to that program to really have got me on this path in training in America. As you said, part of that program, we were in Kentucky for the Kentucky Derby, and that day when Barbaro won, it was just a real magical day, and that horse was so impressive, and I just fell in love with training in America and the racetrack way of life. It's very different to Europe and everywhere else in the world, really. And it's just, I fell in love with the routine here, the atmosphere, and the passion for it. And it was very straightforward. My goals from that point on.
Okay, excellent. Wow, perfect. And from borrowing equipment, from Gary Stevens at Hollywood
Mhm.
Park to Breeders' Cup Glory, what would you tell that younger yourself who started with, just three horses?
I think just stay humble and always keep your foot on the pedal. Always keep your foot on the gas. I think there's temptation when you're training is to you when you win a few races, you think, man, this is here we go. This is we're gonna rise to the top from here. But the game's really fickle. Where you can be flying 1 minute and then have the lowest of the low the next minute, and that's the thoroughbred business and a lot of professional sports. It's you can be flying and riding high 1 minute and uh, down low the next. It's just a roller coaster ride. And I think the main thing as a young trainee, you just got to keep your foot on the gas all the time. And in terms of like just trying to pick up new owners, new horses, and even when because hustling when you're down at the not having a good run is really hard. And so like pushing and keeping your foot on the gas when you're doing good is much easier. So I think that's something that I would remind myself when I was starting out.
Perfect. Let's talk a little bit more about your father. So, how's your father, Philip Blaker's legacy as a jockey and renowned equine sculptor influence your approach to training, especially, with a horse like Straight No Chaser, who needs some kind of, patience handling.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's a whole lot of parallels you can draw between being an artist and a horse trainer, but um, yeah, my father was a very talented jockey, and he's a very talented sculptor now. And I think that all stems, I think a lot of it stems from the love of the horse. He's always people ask him, how did you go from being a steeplechase jockey to a world-renowned artist? There's no one else that's done that. And it's very unique. And he's obviously very successful in both realms, which is very unusual. Um, but I think the parallel between the two is just the love of the horse. And he was a jockey because he loved horses and loved racing and the competitive spirit involved with that. And I think that moving to being an artist, what makes him so good at it is that he really is a great horseman, and he can assess every horse and capture their individual nuances, and because he loves horses, and I think that shows in his artwork. And I think that's really what stems, that's my beginnings as well, as I do this because I love horses. And when you get a horse like Straight No Chaser coming into the barn, that's why I do it. It's just it's it drives me, and it's exciting, and that's a big reason why I do what I do. And getting to share that with all the owners and partners and everyone else that's involved with the horses is a big factor of what drives me as well. So it's exciting times.
Perfect. In terms of sales, what sales do you typically attend? And are there any, bloodstock agents or consultant that you work with?
Yeah, I mean, I think I try to go to as many sales as we can. You don't pick up any clients sitting in your office. The main ones we focus on in the States, obviously the yearling sales, Keeneland and Faisy Tipton, yearling sales, and the 2-year-old sales in Ocala as well, OBS. Those that I try to go to them as much as possible. The agents I use in America in are Craig Rounsfell. He's Australian that I did the Flying Start program with. I work with him with buying yearlings, Boomer Bloodstock, and then at the 2-year-old sales, Mike McMahon and Jamie Hill. They help me there a lot. Connor Foley of Oracle Bloodstock, he helps me there. We work together a lot. And then in the Middle East, I have some help from Owen Sullivan, who's always helping me look out for the next top prospect. And we just try and have a presence at all the sales. I like to just keep a finger on the pulse of things globally, and obviously Tattersalls back home in England. That's another one that we would go to the horses and training sale as well, because I mean, racing in California, there's just horses from all around the world. So we're always trying to look out for the next good one coming in, whether it be a yearling, a 2-year-old, or a horse in training. So we just kind of try and keep active, and be always have a presence.
Excellent. And how did the horse Straight No Chaser come to you, actually?
So he was picked out at the Faisy Tipton
Hmm.
2-year-old in training sale in Maryland. He was selected by the team at my racehorse. That is Nick Hines and Phil Hager. Those two guys picked him out at the sale, and I think he had a really impressive workout at the 2-year-old sales, and I think he just needed a little time when he came back as a 2-year-old. He was with a good friend of mine, Andrew Lerner, and he retired. And he just felt like the horse needed more time as a 2-year-old. A lot of they push him kind of hard at those 2-year-old sales to get ready, and he's just a horse that's always been got improved as he's got older. And as a 2-year-old, I think there was no difference. So they give him a little time, helped him grow up and mature. And then when he came to me at the end of the 2-year-old year, beginning of his 3-year-old year, we started back from scratch and started gearing him up towards his debut at the middle of his 3-year-old year.
Excellent. What made him so special during the sales? Um, what kind of early signs would you have
I
noticed?
think, at the 2-year-old sales, is that what you mean? Like
Yeah, yeah,
what was his special trait? I
exactly.
think that the main thing at the 2-year-old sales that we look for is an excellent breeze, a very good breeze with a good gallop out, and the horse is doing it in hand as much as possible. Um, and I think the thing about Straight No Chasers, I think you could argue he had a modest pedigree. I think he had a very good breeze and looked excellent, and I think he had a modest pedigree. I mean, he's definitely all credit to Spitester. He's had a lot of winners, but Straight No Chaser is certainly the best one. But he wasn't one of the absolute super fashionable sires at that time, and so I think he was a little under the radar. This horse in terms of his pedigree, and I think that's why he didn't cost a whole lot more. But he had an excellent work, and he has he's a very physically impressive horse. He's scopy, which is unusual for a sprinter. But he's always been very athletic and had a big stride and very straightforward to train. He's always wants to go. So I think showed at early stages when he was a 2-year-old.
Perfect. Could you tell us a little bit more about the owners themselves? Who are they? How long you've been working with them?
Yeah, I mean, I've been really fortunate to have horses from my racehorse. It's a micro share syndicate that was started by Michael Behrens, and it's they purchase yearlings and 2-year-olds and throughout the year and offer them as syndicated up syndications, partnerships, and there are sometimes hundreds of owners that buy in for 100, $200 depending on the cost of the horse. And with using Straight No Chaser as an example, I think there's 800 owners involved in him, so it's
Wow.
every race is like a big party, and
Mhm.
it's really cool to be in a real novel ownership group like that. And people often ask me, is it hard with so many owners? And actually, it's not. The team at my racehorse, like Joe Moran, they're really easy to work with, and they're a big part of the reason the horse has been so successful recently. They were very patient with me and always allowed my team, to do the right thing by the horse, give him time to get ready. And that's as a trainer, that's great not to have that pressure. And I think that's a big part of the horse's success. And why we do this is to win races and to share those successes with the owners. And when you have 800, it's even better. It's like a big, as I said,
It's a big
it's
party.
very enjoyable, it's emotional, and I love sharing those big days, those big wins with all these people. It makes it that much more special.
Excellent. You've described previously Straight No Chaser as not the most straightforward horse. How has this, influenced your approach, especially your training approach, when preparing for these major international targets?
Yeah, I mean, he's the kind of horse, he's a high energy horse, and he always will do more if you let him do more. So it's always been kind of gearing him down as much as possible. He's really fast, but he's not uncontrollable. He's real smart. He'll do everything the rider asks of him. he's classy, he's a stakes horse. But he will do more if you let him. So it's always been about keeping his speed under control, doing enough to get him fit, but not too much that he kind of burns himself out. He's a lightly made horse. He has a light frame. And he certainly, if he could easily do too much in the mornings, that you wouldn't be primed for a race. So there's a kind of a fine line you want to do in terms of fitness and doing too much. So he's a kind of horse you got to kind of always keep an eye on. But I mean, just having a horse as talented as him, it's that's the main thing. That factor is the most important thing. So like keeping him under control in the morning in his training is a big part of the day-to-day activities.
Okay, perfect. And finally, onto the last question. Straight No Chaser has a light frame for a sprinter. How does this physical attribute, influence your approach to managing him through ambitious international campaigns?
Well, I think when you say light frame, I think it's a little not entirely true. I think maybe that's something I said in the past. I think he's just not he doesn't look like your typical sprinter. I think of a dirt sprinter especially as being short coupled, very strong, very a lot of muscle, and he's kind of a little leaner. A little more scopy. He looks like, if you didn't know his pedigree and his race record, you'd probably think he would be more of a miler type, going off the way he's conformed. But he's very athletic the way he looks, and he's got very good conformation. But he's certainly, if you look at his race record, he's run well and run best spacing the races out a little bit. And I think horses that are a little leaner, like he is, certainly I think tend to run better with a little bit more time between races. And I think that's evident in the way that we've approached his training and his campaign. So I think you can see that there. But I mean, he's just a very talented horse, and that's I'm just really thankful to have him. Thankful for the owners, and I'm just really enjoying the ride. Really.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for the interview. This was great.
You're welcome.
Lots of
Anytime.
information.
Anytime.